Hello, welcome to another McLaren Fans podcast. This week we're joined by Perry Brown. Hi, Perry.
Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm good. Unfortunately, we're not joined by Sarah this week. She's still not well, and we do know that she's at least on the mend, and hopefully she'll be back in time for the Australian race, just a couple of weeks' time. However, she has sent us some notes, so we'll be going through some of those as we go through as well. Perry. So let's talk about a couple of sort of maybe the biggest controversy of the weekend to start with was actually before any of the racing sort of started. I guess the question is: should we be in Saudi at all? Should we have an F1 race there? Last year we decided not to do the podcast for Saudi because of the human rights issues, and this year, even though we're doing the podcast, we still want to state that the facts are still the same, that there are human rights issues in that country which really should be addressed, and we shouldn't really, personally don't think we should be racing there because of them. However, this year has added a couple of more things to that, which is track safety, which we kind of saw with the Mick Schumacher crash, and a few of the other drivers kind of saying, this is the most dangerous track we race on, and also the safety of the actual event, given that there was a terrorist attack very nearby. I do remember last year there was something similar happened. Should we be going back to somewhere like that next year, where the possibility of a terrorist attack or a driver getting really, really injured is quite high on the possibilities?
Absolutely not, really. We all know why Formula One's racing there. Stefano Domenico, the questions were being raised before the weekend even begun. Stefano Domenicali, I think it was, said, well, we race in places like these to shine light on the things that are going wrong in that country. But series like Extreme E will go to somewhere where pollution is bad, and they will actively help the pollution and clear it up and leave a lasting effect. I don't think Formula One did that in Saudi Arabia, if I'm honest. They've not shined a light on it. They've just taken their money and said thank you very much and promoted all their businesses. And as you say, the questions being raised before we get there, and then the track itself. I think three drivers, if you include Mick, and 2 drivers from Formula 2, all being hospitalised from this track. It's very questionable track safety, even if you take away all the much bigger issues.
I totally agree with what you're saying there. I think there's, if they are going to come out and say, "Oh, we're racing here to, sort of highlight some of these issues," then they should be doing that. We all know how sort of kind of hashtaggy the We Racers one was. In the end, it didn't really make much difference. I'm not seeing much of a change because of that, which is really, really disappointing, either from F1, the FIA, or the teams. I'd love to see them come out and say, because of We Racers 1, this is what's happened and this is what's changed. Maybe as fans, we should be challenging on that as well.
Absolutely.
I think it's not a place that makes me feel good to watch or good to kind of feel that we're participating in. And hopefully, it won't be on the calendar too long. Unfortunately, as we all know, there are other places that will gladly take its place with probably just as bad problems and things like that. Let's move on to sort of the sort of racing side of things and the McLaren side of things. So, I think sort of for me, there's a couple of things that kind of stood out. There was, some really good things from this weekend to take positives as a McLaren fan. So we'll get into those. One of the things that I quite liked seeing this weekend was we seem to be getting a few drivers with this the sort of helmet cam and their sort of view, and it's really quite, especially under the lights, it was quite good to see. However, once Crofty pointed out that you can see the driver's nose, that's all I could see. That's all I could end up looking at. I wasn't looking at what the driver was looking at. I was just saying, well, you can see Lando's nose all the time.
Yeah, so I was looking at the inner lining of the helmet more as well, things like that. So, oh, looks like the one I've got. Yeah, as soon as they pointed it out. But it's just it's just about a great shot, isn't it? Looking out, as you say, at driver's eye level, and it stops Martin Brundle having to say, no, this, the T cam, the one up above the driver, saying, oh, this isn't realistic. They can see far too much from up here. So it's much better than praising than destroying it and saying, no, you're not getting the real authentic view.
And what sort of amazed me is how little they can actually see. How it's like peering through somebody's letterbox.
Yes.
Literally, and it's just like, wow. But that obviously these guys are incredibly skilled. But it was good. So yes, definitely more of helmet stroke nose cameras for me.
I think it'll be better when we get to someone that isn't a night race as well, because I think when it goes to those that helmet cam at the moment, there's a lot of glare.
Yeah.
Of course, the camera's picking up more than the eyes of the driver will. So I think we'll see when we get to a few day races and it's a bit more natural light. It might be even better, which bring it on. Yeah,
definitely. So what did you kind of think of sort of, obviously that's the race weekend itself, so if we kind of start with quali and the free practices, I kind of felt we started to make some progress from where we were 2 weeks ago in Bahrain. If you take where we were in Bahrain testing, we've now had 2 races or 2 full race weekends where the car has run the full distance, give or take what happened to Danny Rick. But that hopefully wasn't the same issues that we had in Bahrain previously in the testing. I've not seen anything about that, whether it was a PU sort of problem or anything else like that, but certainly we're getting that mileage and we're getting to understand it a little bit. I still think there's some people out there that kind of expect us to magically flick a switch and jump right up the order and be challenging what seems to be sort of Red Bull and Ferrari at the minute being the top of the rankings. It was interesting once again for me to see that the kind of slower teams on the grid were running Mercedes power units again. Well, yes. When I say interesting, I was like a bit good, to be honest. I think is the word.
Yes, when you see all of the Mercedes powered teams have stepped back together, and likewise all the Ferrari teams have stepped forward, I do wonder whether that fuel change, we sort of put that to one side because the aerodynamics are a big change. That's the big new era change for 2022. But actually that fuel change, I think, has had a much larger effect, it seems, so far on the running order. Time will obviously tell with that one. But yes, as you say, it was a lot more positive. My hopes going into qualifying were getting us both into both cars into Q2, I think, which is, you've got to be realistic. And that's the thing. As you say, we get a lot of fans online that want us just to flick a switch and go faster and find a second. Like, we're not already working hard as a team to achieve exactly that. So yeah, we've got to be realistic. And as you say, I set those goals as Q2, and we did that 11th and 12th before the penalty for Ricciardo. And yeah, you've got to take that as a positive and massive step from Bahrain.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we did. I think we got the best out of the cars that we could have done in quali. I think we maybe slightly unlucky not to just sneak one into Q3, but time will come. It'll. I think somebody put a stat that was our first. That all last season we got at least one car into Q3. So yeah, but like you say, everything's mixed up. I mean, when you start looking at Kevin Magnussen and a Haas for a top 6 finish, you kind of start to think, right, a lot of things have changed here, and it's a big reset, which is, to me, is great. Everybody was chasing Mercedes, but
before the weekend we'd get 2 cars ahead of Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. I mean, if we've got problems, wow, Mercedes in 15th with Lewis Hamilton. I don't know whether it was just a setup or something like that, but yeah, certainly not the greatest weekend for Hamilton either. However, under the race, we saw Landos score our first points of the season, and that's great to see. However, being realistic, it was the track suiting us slightly better. Probably not functional improvements that we made, or we probably have made some. But it's good to see us making sort of improvements on that side of it and getting some points. I kind of hope maybe creeping in at P10 or something like that, or a P9 or P10 finish would be progress. So good to get those first points of the season on the board. I think did we get 8 points for that, or was it 6 points for that position we were in? P7, 6, yeah. So that was great to see, and it kind of shows that we're probably going to go to some tracks that really do suit us. We might go to let's say we go to Monza again, and this is where I'm slightly worried. Like last year we got to Monza, we got a track that suits our car, but then the PU isn't up to it.
Yeah.
And I think I also read somewhere at the weekend that are we actually able to change any of the sort of power unit stuff for the next couple of years? I don't know, because Red Bull have said, oh, we don't want to change it because we're now doing these Honda engines and now ours and stuff like that. Actually, that graphic annoyed me where it said, oh, that's was it Red Bull Power Unit's first win in only its second ever race? And we're like, it's a Honda engine. We all know it's a Honda engine. It's just got a different sticker on it. But yeah.
The sponsorship deal is
yeah, exactly.
That tag on your engines, they're Renault, really.
Yeah. So I do think that we've made some improvements. We've got to have done, because the car was on the track for the whole race and the race weekend and stuff. But yeah, certainly I don't think there's going to be, like we said, that magic sort of switch that'll jump us high up the order. But it was great to see us get points. I mean, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we know it's a new era, new package of rules, and all of the cars are going to improve rapidly at the start. We know we're starting on the back foot, so to pick up points this early, yes, the track might have suited us, but hopefully as time goes on, we'll understand our car better and we'll get better as a result, and we'll be more competitive. Obviously, we know the other teams are moving forward, but it's that trust in the team. We know they're all working like incredibly hard to move up the order. And I think back to 2015, 2016, the McHonda years, and I don't think there was that level of trust. I don't know if it was the same with you. We had the matrix, the leadership matrix, Martin Whitmarsh there, and I was always, they seem to be looking more at the problems, like, oh, it's Honda are the problem. Then Honda are firing back saying, no, it's your chassis is the problem. Rather than going, we're in this mess together, let's come up with a solution. And I think we've changed massively as a team in those 5 and 6 years to this team now, which say, look, we're quoted as saying 100 points down on downforce. What do we do about it? Let's get some solutions on the car. And I trust Andreas, I trust Zach, I trust this whole team to get us back to where we want them to be.
Yeah, Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it is a very different team, and there's definitely some, there's camaraderie between the team there. And Sarah mentioned in her notes that she saw in the media pen after the race, Dan arrive and Andreas joined in to congratulate Lando and stuff like that. So you can see that the morale is still good in the team. They're not all kind of shuffling around going, "Oh, this is terrible." But yes, they might be disappointed, but I think you're right. We're all focused on solving the issue, whereas I felt during the McHonda years, as we call them, we have to get a T-shirt made with that on, don't we? we there was a lot of finger pointing going on, and this time you can't just say, "Oh, it's the power." You can't say, "Oh, it's the power unit." Yes, it's down, but other teams with that power unit are doing much better because, yeah, when we had Honda, we were just the only team with it, so we couldn't really compare. But yeah, I think from our point of view, there's I think we're in a good place and a good way of working to solve these. It's just going to take most of this year. I think we'll be, by this time the summer break comes around, I think the order will be very different to what you're seeing now at the minute with the cars. I don't think we're going to jump up and kind of overtake Mercedes or sort of one of the top three teams, but I would expect us by then to be challenging the likes of Alpine and Alpha Tauri up there. And making life a little bit difficult. But then I would probably see the same from Aston Martin happening and stuff like that. The midfield is going to be even tighter than it's been for the last couple of years because I think we're all going to be very much on the same level. So yeah, it's not going to just be a walk in the park.
It could be very different, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But it's one of the things that sort of annoys me at the moment, looking through Twitter, and as you say, Mercedes are down. They're very much in the midfield, or just in their own little class in between midfield and the top two teams. They're about 6 to 7 tenths of a second off per lap, and everyone's like, "Yeah, they'll get it together because they're Mercedes." And then you look at McLaren, another few tenths off that. Yeah. It's like, oh, they really botched it. And it's like, well, hang on, how can Mercedes recover that much time, but we can't? Of course we can. All the teams have that capability. So, as you say, the order could be extremely different come the summer.
Yes. It's this year is a development race, basically. Who develops the car fastest and spends their tokens and their budget cap wisely. Like you said, there's stuff on Twitter. I've picked up a few tweets to sort of read out here. One from Randy Singer now. He's the one of the aerodynamicists at McLaren. Well done, team. The amount of grit training and hard work put in by these athletes and those supporting them in the design and analysis and health cannot be underestimated. Well deserved. Talking about the pit stops that have improved, which we'll get on to in a minute. Owen Davis says, from the issues that we had in testing in Bahrain to P7, that's a comeback. I'm a very proud McLaren fan. Fearlessly forward, of course. And then we've got one from Mark Taylor. Still a lot of questions to answer about the track and racing in Saudi, but please, everyone was okay. Looking forward to Melbourne and some early alarm calls. So, there's a good few people out there on Twitter being quite sort of positive about McLaren and looking forward to the next race and stuff like that. But let's talk about pit stops. One of my favourite subjects. I think
so I just mute myself now for the next 20 minutes?
Yeah, I'll just ramble on for a bit. I think most people who've listened to this podcast for certainly for the last couple of seasons since we started will know that I was a real stickler for getting our pit stops fast. I'm not talking about 1.9 seconds or anything like that or breaking records, but when you're fighting for points or if you're fighting for wins, those pit stops can actually cost you points, wins, and everything else. So what I'm really over the moon about is that we got a 1-2 in the fastest pit stops this weekend. Not only that, we got the fastest pit stop in Bahrain the weekend before. The consistency is the bit that I'm absolutely over the moon with. the times will come down and other people will get close to us. But if we can keep that consistency through the season for those, 2.4-second pit stops, we're doing something really right there. And, I'm not taking any credit for that because obviously, I've got no influence on that really, but it's good to see. It does every time that we do a good pit stop, then, I'm kind of, this is great. This is really good. Let's be realistic. Things can go wrong in pit stops. Wheel guns can get stuck. There's going to be some slow ones in the season, but if we can get that consistency where 95% of our pit stops over the season are, 2.5 seconds, then we're in a really good place. I'm going to not rant now.
No, very well said. Yeah, absolutely agree. And it's just enough. It's one of those things that can go wrong, rather than almost can go right. So, as you say, that consistent, getting them right, getting all the wheels on. But when you get the time down as well, when you've got both of those things together, I think you've said before, we'd rather have 3.5 pit stops if all the wheels are on. But to get both together at once, then yeah, absolutely, hands down, well done to everyone at the team that's obviously worked on those over the winter, learned how to deal with these new larger wheels and tires, which everyone's talking about. They're much heavier, so some very very long hours in the gym, I'm sure, making sure that they can get those tires on and off.
Well, yeah, and also they're very different to the size and the weight of what we had previously. So there's obviously been a lot of work there, and then that's a really good sort of place for us to be. Let's shout about our positives, given that other things aren't quite going our way just at this minute. Just I'm very over the moon about that. A couple of last few things on the agenda here is just a quick point, really, just back on the wheels and stuff like that. How great do our Google wheels look? Every time that we had a side-on shot on the thing, I was like, that looks brilliant. That looks fantastic. I think McLaren should make a T-shirt with the wheel and the logo thing on it, powered by Android or whatever it says, or something like that.
I'm sure we'll get more clothing through the year when they add Google to the branding on the shirt that you're modelling there for yourself as well.
Yeah. Sure, I noticed that on some of them it's replaced the Dell technologies and they put Android on there on some of them.
Oh yes, yeah.
So so a significant sponsor, which is great. And I guess the other thing, 2 races in now to these new regulations, and wow, they're making a huge difference, aren't they? We're seeing great racing now. I was watching the battle between Max and Charles was enthralling to watch. Now, obviously, we've got the cars can follow a lot closer, and you could see the sort of like tactical battle of who was going to, trying not to get to the DRS line first and things like that. But yeah, then you got sort of Max chasing down Charles Leclerc like a whippet chasing a hare around a greyhound track for a couple of laps, and then sort of obviously passing him near the end of the race. But it was great to watch, and more of that would be fantastic. It does seem that we're not going to get that case of where a car in front can just fly away and get a 20-second gap because they're in clean air and everyone else is stuck behind. And it'd be nice when, I think, once we've gotten these couple of tracks out of the way, because Australia is a bit more difficult to overtake as well, and we get to somewhere where a bit more overtaking can happen. I'd like to see what can kind of go there, sort of, there's be a few tracks that come up where we can see a bit more overtaking, a bit more sort of battles in the midfield and at the front. What are your thoughts on that sort of the regulation changes so far? I mean, a lot of people in the paddock seem to be sort of praising about them and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the most telling shot, the from Jeddah especially, was through sector one. We're on the rear wing, looking back from Charles Leclerc at Max Verstappen. When we've seen these shots before, you'd see Max sort of getting loose, losing time, hand over fist through those kind of corners through sector one. He wasn't losing. He nearly lost the rear once. You know, he had one moment, but it wasn't anything unexpected. He was able to follow pretty closely, and that's a massive win. As you say, let's take away the sort of shenanigans over after you into the final hairpin. It was, as you say, it was great to watch. And same with the Alpine cars going hammer and tongs at each other early in the race, early doors. We're seeing these great battles, and as you said, they're lasting all the way around the track. They're not getting one shot at a pass and then having to cool the tyres off for 3 laps and get out of that airflow. They can sit right behind them, put the constant pressure on. And that's what we want to see, a battle over 3, 4, 5 laps, lasting and punch and counter punch. So yeah, it's a massive win so far, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, there's, if we see more of that at the front and in the midfield, I think we're going to have an exciting season. I think, we might find some of the tracks that were pretty boring before become slightly more exciting to watch. Yeah, and, I know it's still early days, but yeah, if we've got a season where we've got a lot of close racing, then I'm all for it. And yeah, I hope that nobody figures out how to kind of do some sort of dirty air out of the back or anything else like that. I think the fact that they've had Ross Brawn in the sort of FIA, F1 sort of side of things helping along with this sort of changes has probably helped, because obviously, he's been in charge of some rather special cars in his time.
So he knows the loophole, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Just on our final point on the sort of agenda for tonight, you'd mentioned about the new race director, and you wanted to mention something around that.
Yeah, so you touched on it last week with the Nils Vitic is his name. He turned up in Bahrain, absolutely bamboozled everyone by saying the white line's the limit, and instead of going at turn 3 and 4, he said no, around the whole track. And everyone just applauded this great decision, that this white line that's been painted on every track for years is suddenly the track limit. Yeah. But I think we saw a bit of it, a bit more battles than we in Jeddah, and again we saw a little bit of this new. Okay, if a position is gained illegally, we're not going to get involved. We're going to let the drivers decide. And I think the first possible test of that was the Perez Sainz, who came out of the pit first incident, and obviously we heard the radio from Red Bull saying, okay, you have to give the place back. Whether that was intervened by the FIA, by the stewards, turned around saying that to Red Bull to pass the message on, we don't know now, because they've said we're trying to communicate less. But it was but do it after the restart bit. I was a bit like, okay, that's a bit sketchy. If you've got to give a position back, surely you've got to do it not when it suits you, but the first opportunity. So yeah. I wonder whether we might see a bit more of that in the coming races, whether they might say, okay, we clocked you doing that, and we're now going to head that off and talk to these drivers a bit more and these teams, and we'll see a changing of the guard a bit more substantially.
Yeah, I think on that Perez Sainz incident, I think they mentioned in commentary that they weren't sure whether you could give a place back during the safety car because of deemed to be overtaking, and that's not allowed, and whether they'd get like a double penalty for that. And even if they went, well, we were giving a place back, there's the reason the safety car is out there for safety, and another car overtaking another car makes it slightly unsafe. So I wonder if that's the reason why they didn't do it until after the restart. But it would be good to have some clarity on that, wouldn't it, of what actually happened. but I think, yes, a stronger race director seems to be what we're getting and what we need. And like you, I was, over the moon that you went, the racetrack is the white lines because that's what we've painted. And it's like, yes, finally, it's not 4 meters past it because you go a bit wide and stuff. Yeah, so
when Mick had his crash as well, getting him on the scene, seeing him going over that, and you got to see a bit more of him about doing his day-to-day job. And again, just great to see he's taken to it extremely well, because this is only his second race in Formula One. Obviously, we know he's come from. Is it Nils that's come from World Endurance, or is he the DTM?
I'm not sure which one.
By the way, he's done racing before, so he knows the ins and outs. But to come into Formula One, what we class as, what most people class the pinnacle of motorsport, that's a high pressure role, and he seems to have taken to it very well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And I think a lot of people are waiting to catch them out because of what happened with Massey last year. But there's the more stronger races that he has, the less people will think about it. So I think that's great. I think it's not been our best start of the season, but we're slightly getting back on track. What do you think about upcoming in Australia? Do you think we'll get some points there? How do you think we'll fare?
Lando was very positive. He sounded positive about Australia. He said this one, that might suit us a bit more. Again, they've reprofiled a lot of the corners to be a bit or a lot faster. Added some banking as well, which should help us. He identified the high and medium corners as our strengths, and very much the slower corners being our weakness. So again, there's a few slow corners on that track. It's great, isn't it? We don't know. We just don't know. Exactly. I think my ambitions remain the same for the team. We hope that we can get into Q2 at the moment. I think we can relatively accurately say that's what we'll be hoping for in Australia. And if we get into Q3, then absolutely let's celebrate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And on that note, that's all we've got time for this week. Thanks for joining us, Perry. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully we'll have you back on again soon. And there'll be another McLaren Fans podcast after the Australian race. And until then, enjoy watching the motor racing. And any questions or comments, just give us a shout on Twitter. Thanks very much. Cheers, Perry.